Good morning. Today we begin the last chapter in the book of James. We're going to be talking about chapter 5, and we're going to be starting with the first 12 verses of James. So let's turn in our Bibles to James chapter 5 verse 1. James chapter 5 verse 1, and we will begin what I consider the final leg on this journey through the book of James. Now listen, you rich people. Weep and wail because of the misery that is coming upon you. Your wealth has rotted, and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay. The workmen who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have fattened yourselves in the day of the slaughter. You have condemned and murdered innocent men. Innocent men who are not opposing you. James proclaims the worthlessness of riches, not the worthlessness of the rich. I submit to you, today's money will be worthless when Christ returns. So we should spend our time accumulating the kind of treasures that will be worthwhile when we enter God's eternal kingdom. Money is not the problem. The problem is that Christian leaders need money to live and support their families. Churches need money to do their work effectively. Missionaries need money to help them spread the gospel. It is this love, or it is the love of money, I should say, that actually leads to evil, but not money itself, as we see in 1 Timothy 6:10. It is the love of money that causes some people to oppress others in order to get more wealth. This is a warning to all believers who are tempted to adopt worldly standards rather than God's standards, as well as an encouragement to all those who are oppressed by the rich. The innocent that James alludes to were the defenseless people, such as the poor, laborers. Poor persons who could not pay their bills or pay their debts were thrown in prisons or were forced to sell all of their possessions. At times, they were even forced to sell their family members into slavery. Now, with no opportunity to work off their debts, poor people often died. They died of starvation, they died of disease. And God called this murder. Hoarding money, exploiting employees, and living self-indulgently will not escape God's notice. Let's look now at verse 7. Be patient then, my brothers, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, and how patient he is for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord is coming near. The farmer must wait patiently for his crops to grow. He can't be in a hurry. He cannot even hurry the process. But he does not take the whole summer off and kick back and go fishing and hope that all goes well in the fields. There is much work that has to be done to ensure a good harvest. And in the same way, we as believers must wait patiently for Christ's return. We cannot make Christ come back any sooner. But while we wait, there is much work that needs to be done, much work that we can do to advance God's kingdom. Both the farmer and the Christian must live by faith, looking forward to the future and toward their future reward for their labors. Don't live as if Christ will never come. You need to work faithfully to build his kingdom. The king will come when the time is right and on his own timetable. Verse 9. Don't grumble against each other, brothers, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. When things go wrong, we tend to grumble against and blame others for our miseries. Blaming others is easier than owning our share of the responsibility. It's much, much easier to play the blame game, but it can be both destructive and sinful. And before we judge others for their shortcomings, we need to remember that Christ, the judge, will come to evaluate each of us. He will not let us get away with shifting the blame to others. That is why it is so important to be repentant. Verse 10. Brothers, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we consider blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. You know, many prophets have suffered and have been persecuted, such as Moses, Elijah, and Jeremiah. Just to name a few. Verse 12. Above all, my brothers, do not swear, not by earth, by heaven, or by anything else. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, or you will be condemned. A person with a reputation for exaggerating or lying can't get anyone to believe him on his word alone. Believers should never become like that. We need to always be honest so that others will believe our simple yeses and our simple nos. And by avoiding lies, by avoiding half-truths, and by avoiding omissions of the truth, we as believers become known as trustworthy people. Amen and amen. Next week, we finish chapter 5 of James and essentially our entire series on the book or the letter of James. And as you start this week, may the Lord bless you and keep you. And may the Lord give you peace. Amen and amen.